The following program is intended for mature audiences.
Booty's Revelation.
Hey everyone, welcome to today's podcast. What's up everybody? It is November 12th, Wednesday. Welcome. So it's kind of a slow news day today. So we're going to get into the headlines. One of the big headlines coming up today is Trump's proposal for a $2,000 tariff dividend, which will go out to qualifying Americans. Everybody except the rich is the way he puts it. And also, and because of perhaps, Americans are still reeling from a cost of living crisis, mostly brought on by the inflation caused by the Biden administration's borrowing. Now, what exactly do I mean by that? Now, people keep throwing around numbers from the Biden years of inflation, 9%, 6%. But you have to understand that all that is compounded. And when I say compounded, you take 1 year of inflation, you minus that from the value of your dollar, and then you take that percentage and you compound that by the next year's increase in inflation, which is the decrease in the dollar. And so people are complaining about affordability issues. Well, affordability issues are caused mostly by inflation. That's what raises costs above normal or above what you're making. And if you don't change jobs, if you're still in the same job that you were before the Biden administration, your pay was degraded almost by a quarter, the value of what you're getting paid. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, some about podcasting as well. So we'll get into the headlines right now. Let's read the news. We're going to start out here, though, with Reuters. First headline up. Deal to end U.S. shutdown would also allow some Republican senators to seek $500,000, which is actually they're suing. So opening the government is going to allow the suit to go through. They're suing the government for $500,000 for a January 6th probe. Now, in light of what we're discovering about the January 6th pipe bomber, this is going to be well-needed funding towards the probe. Obviously. This is really important because before the midterms, the Republicans are going to have to, I insist, and not only have to, but must go as far as they can with investigative committees, not only to look into January 6th, which was a big campaign issue in 2024. You need to deflate that by proving it was a Fedsurrection. We have a lot of proof already, but we still need to go further. My problem is, of course, Kash Patel hasn't revealed how many agents were in the crowd from the FBI. Forget about the burn bags that have supposedly Epstein evidence and all these other things. No one cares about that. What we need to do is A, prosecute the wrongdoing of the Biden administration and the Obama administration as Trump came into office in 2016. prosecute those people related, even I would think, is undo the pardons from AutoPen and prosecute the people involved in the January 6th committee, but also try to investigate how much the government was involved in January 6th. Now, like I said before, the pipe bomb is key to this. We need to find out who the pipe bomber is and if they're connected to the government, because that happened before even the rally, and it was a predicate to unleash certain investigative powers and actions by not only military intelligence, the FBI, Capitol Police, etc., but also by the CIA. Story goes on to say 8 Republican senators to seek hundreds of thousands of dollars in damages for alleged privacy violations stemming from the Biden administration's investigation of January 6, 2021 Capitol riot. The bill, which passed the Senate on Monday, included a clause that would allow lawmakers whose phone records were subpoenaed as part of the probe to sue the Justice Department for damages. The legislation retroactively makes it illegal in most cases to obtain a senator's phone data without disclosure and allows those whose records were obtained to sue the Justice Department for $500,000 per violation, along with attorney's fees and costs. The Justice Department could opt to settle the lawsuits rather than fight them in court, which they will, obviously. We will not rest until justice is served and those who were involved in the weaponization of government are held accountable, it is indeed the weaponization of government, which has been going on for some time, against the American people, which is the sad part, but most particularly against opposition party politicians. So that is important because we're trying to uncover corrupt and immoral behavior, which is being glossed over by the perception of the Overton window, that people find certain behavior excusable. And this is the point I'm going to get to in today's episode, is that how people could take unconscionable behavior and justify it. How do people get in that frame of mind where there's obviously, and the Charlie Kirk's assassination made this perfectly clear because it's outside the realm of Trump derangement syndrome. So when Trump was almost assassinated, you could understand why people that succumb to the military psyop to make them hate Trump, that they could go, oh, okay, but there wasn't such a psyop dedicated towards Charlie Kirk. And so you had that kind of seeping over of people that were infected with TDS were having the same, I don't want to say, well, I guess I could say immoral justification for violence. So let's go to the TPS event in Berkeley a couple days ago. So the New York Post has the headline, protester named Jihad charged with assault and robbery after a brawl at Berkeley Turning Point USA rally. Now, you might have seen the video from this, and we're going to get to a certain point soon where I'm going to be playing more video clips. I'm having a hard time getting all my new technology up and running, so I want to make sure it's a smooth transition from how I'm doing things now to the new way of doing things. In any case, so I'll be showing more clips, including this clip of there was a brawl. It was basically a fight between two people, but a demonstrator named Jihad who was at Monday's chaotic protest against Turning Point USA at the University of California, Berkeley, was charged with assault and robbery for an incident at the scene. Jihad Prepalez, 25, allegedly snatched a chain. He did snatch a chain. We know that from the video, helicopter video. Allegedly snatched a chain necklace from an attendee. It was a cross, sparking a vicious fight that left the victim, because it says he, Jihad, and the victim covered in blood. It was only the victim that was covered in blood, because Jihad got into the guy went to get his chain back, and Jihad turned around and landed one right square on the nose. As Antifa thugs clashed with Charlie Kirk supporters exactly 2 months after the TPUSA founder's assassination, the unidentified victim was initially arrested too, but later released because he hadn't committed any crime. He was just an attendee who was actually evoking Christ, and I know how that pisses off the Satanists and the atheists and all those people, how they get so triggered, and we're going to get to a little more triggering. And that's what I'm talking about, the immoral justification for acts like this. It's the thing that they were raging against. They were mocking Charlie Kirk's assassination. They were saying, as they've been saying for almost 10 years now, it's okay to punch a Nazi, whatever that means, if there are any real Nazis left anywhere. And related article from the Post-Millennial, DOJ launches federal probe after Antifa militants riot at TPUSA Berkeley event honoring Charlie Kirk. In America, we do not allow citizens to be attacked by violent thugs and shrug and turn our backs. And that's exactly what I'm talking about here. This is a ex-post from Harmeet Dillon. Been there, done that, not on our watch. You see, Berkeley and the city of Berkeley should expect some incoming civil rights correspondence and more, Harmeet Dillon wrote. In America, we do not allow our citizens to be attacked by violent thugs, especially when they're motivated by hate. Washington Post, judge to hear arguments on law cutting Planned Parenthood funding. I'm going to have to excuse myself for just a second. I thought this was an other article here. Just a little misplaced article as usual. I was trying to get the stream going on time today, but I was, as usual, late. So the actual article I wanted to go through first was this New York Post article, rainbow flag waving vandal defaced New York City churches with anti-Christian statements. They don't, and they didn't, in the article, they didn't list what the statements were. They were probably blasphemous, I would suppose. But this is what I'm talking about, is the hate. Because originally, these folks on the left, they call themselves liberals, the progressives, were saying there's no place for hate. But then they justify it as the intolerance of intolerance or something like that. And so what would possess you to attack Christians, churches? Churches, for hundreds of years, churches haven't done really anything wrong. I mean, the only thing that some see as some problems with the Christians is that a lot of Christian religious organizations don't approve of homosexuality, and in particular, transgenderism. But that's what I kept saying over time. It was tolerance. You need to tolerate homosexuality. Then you need to accept it. Okay, you accept it. Then you need to be supportive of their right, not necessarily supportive of their action, but supportive of their right to be who they want to be. But then it came to promoting, and that's where people drew the line. We could tolerate, we could accept, but then, and even support their right to exercise their will. But when it came to promoting, people had a problem with promoting things that were against their point of view, their worldview, whatever, ideology. So that gets us to our next statement here. Our next headline is from the Washington Times. Judge to hear arguments on law cutting Planned Parenthood Medicaid funds. Now, here's the point is, why should my tax dollars go to something I find morally repugnant? So I know we live in a secular country, and I know that people in some instances are going to want to terminate their pregnancy. Oh, okay. I'm not saying they shouldn't legally be allowed to do that. Some people think that it should be illegal. I would just assume the position as Trump, leave it up to the states where the majority could decide. And you could always leave the state and get an abortion if you want. But my problem is, people that are poor shouldn't have the federal government pay for their abortion. They decided to have, in most cases, unprotected sex. Like I said, condoms are cheaper than abortions. So, or even now, when it comes to contraceptive medicine, the pill, should that be covered? That's a thin line, but I would rather my tax dollars go to contraception than to abortion. Right? So get your contraception paid for by Medicaid, but abortions, absolutely not. President Donald Trump's tax and spending cut bill targets organizations that both provide abortions and receive more than $800,000 a year in Medicaid reimbursements. Planned Parenthood has argued that the law violates the Constitution. How? I don't know. While anti-abortion activists applauded the legislation. There's nothing in the Constitution that says you get the federal government supposed to provide you with abortions. It's really, but people have to realize it's anti-human. You know what I mean? I understand you don't want to carry a pregnancy, maybe, but you have to think about that before you engage in sexual activity. In a report released Wednesday morning ahead of the hearing, Planned Parenthood said the legislation costs about $45 million in September alone as clinics across the country paid for treatment for Medicaid patients out of pocket. Wow. A rate the organization says is not sustainable. Of course it's not. Nearly half of Planned Parenthood's patients rely on Medicaid for health care, aside from abortions. What does Planned Parenthood do besides abortions? Is there prenatal care? Well, great. But I don't know where the $45 million in September alone came from. It was predominantly for abortions, I would imagine. Abortions, which are considered already not covered by the federal insurance program that serves millions of low-income and disabled Americans. How many disabled Americans are getting abortions? It's low income. Like I said, it's when you're on the dole the federal government is giving you, the taxpayer is giving you money. So it's the Obamacare subsidies, you're given insurance, and here also given abortions. And there's a lot of graft involved in that as well. I don't want to get back into that, but Planned Parenthood does contribute. It's a corporation. It does contribute to political campaigns. So while we're on the side of immoral behavior, and people hate moralizing, and I'm not really moralizing, but at a certain point, aren't you going to draw the line to say, you know, what is immoral? I mean, it's just bad behavior, right? To rip suck a fetus out of you. Man, it just turns my stomach. Oh. And all this other stuff too is wishing people dead, assassinations. It's the value of life. I guess it's the Buddhist in me. The value of life, not just human life, but life in general. You're either being productive or destructive. So why be destructive? You're not building anything, you're just destroying. So in what camp does that put you in, really? So along those lines, I want to go to this Guardian article. Now this is, well, let's just go here first. There's this Guardian article. U.S. firefighter detained on the job speaks out after deportation. What I really wanted to go to was, because I thought this article was coming up, because we have a lot to get through. It's a little bit of a slow news day, so I have a little bit of time to fart around. Huh, where did that article go? Huh. Oh, I took it out. That's why. Took it out. Just to briefly recap about this article. It was another Guardian article. That's why I got a little bit confused there. So if anybody's old enough to remember the split up of the Balkans, the former Yugoslavia split up into nations, and it was actually Tito, the communist, that kept the country together. Sometimes hardline dictators are able to keep warring factions and divisive cultures together through authoritarianism. Not saying that's a good thing, but Assad did that in Syria, and Saddam Hussein did that in Iraq as well. So that happens. In any case, the breakup of the Soviet Union, of the Yugoslavia in the 90s, brought up some cultural and different rifts within the Muslims in Bosnia-Herzegovina, but also in Croatia and Macedonia and Serbia and Kosovo and all these other countries that made up the former Yugoslavia. So in any case, during the wars there, what we had was the Muslims, the Serbian majority in Bosnia, Bosnia really as it's known, Herzegovina, was slaughtering the Muslims there and put them in, it was ethnic cleansing sort of thing. So in any case, in the city of Sarajevo, there was an issue. Apparently, a Italian investigative journalist found out, and now they're bringing charges. Italians are bringing charges. The Italian government is bringing charges against Italian tourists who paid up to 70,000 euros to go to Sarajevo during the civil war there in Bosnia to shoot civilians with a sniper rifle. Very crazy. All right, enough of that. Sorry, that's why I took the article out, because it was a little bit of whether or not that was even worth reporting on, because most people don't even remember the Bosnia Civil War and what went on there. And so bringing up something that's 30 years old. Might have been sidetrack. Well, I went down that sidetrack anyway, so. All right, let's get to some illegal alien news. The Guardian, U.S. firefighter detained on the job, speaks out after deportation. I feel betrayed. Border Patrol arrested Jose Bertan Cruz Estrada while he was battling a wildfire in Washington. Now he's in Mexico, separated from his family in Oregon. He says he felt betrayed. A longtime Oregon resident who was born in Mexico and is undocumented. Cruz Estrada has worked as a firefighter since 2019 and for years has also ran a successful landscaping business that he grew from scratch, making him beloved by many in his local community, including his town's mayor. So I know The Guardian is a British publication. So here in America, the law is if you're here illegally, then you're deported. Also, this proves that they're not just rounding up people, that it is targeted. So whether he's a criminal or not a criminal is irrelevant. He's here undocumented. He's an undocumented foreign national, and so he's removed. This idea that if someone got here illegally and has lived a good life and pays his taxes and raised a family and whatever, is a good neighbor, is irrelevant. This idea, and this is what I was talking about, immorality, and I don't mean to moralize, but the difference between right and wrong. Because you believe a law is unjust, that doesn't give you a right to ignore the law. And to be honest with you, I only have two exceptions, and that is speeding and possessing marijuana. I don't think possessing a plant should be illegal, whether you're doing it to smoke or whatever. Those are my only two exceptions. Not jaywalking, not anything else. Most particularly, not illegal immigration. I know people might think, oh, that's so horrible. I don't look at it. I am emotionally detached from the argument. It's just the way it is in the world and in this country. There's a law, and if the law is broken and you suffer the consequences, so be it. They didn't execute the guy. They just made him leave the country. His kids get to stay. The mother, I guess, who is documented, gets to stay. Okay. They make it seem like being deported is the worst thing that could ever happen to you. It isn't. And to be perfectly clear, Kristi Noem made it clear that if you leave voluntarily, you could try to come back. If you're deported, if we have to use resources to remove you, you're not going to be allowed back. So he made his choice, and he's got to sleep with it. The Federalist, weeks after foiled Michigan terror attack, Dearborn, Michigan councilman won't criticize Hezbollah or Hamas. Now, the journalist said city councilman in Dearborn, Kamal Al-Aswafi, refused to answer whether or not he would condemn Hezbollah or Hamas. Now, he's a Muslim. You asking me that? Question mark. I'm a captain in the Army National Guard. I think it's an unfair question. I'm a Bronze Star recipient, which means he served in combat. Great. Thank you for your service. And that's exactly what the journalist said. But he asked the question again. But rather than responding, as far as me, because I feel like it's a loyalty test, loyal to the United States, I've literally been wounded. You're asking me if I believe in Hamas? And then again, after the journalist said his service was admirable, said, I'm asking if you believe Hamas and Hezbollah are terrorist organizations. Simple question. He never answered. So that's my issue, and obviously the reporter's issue, is it's a loyalty test. It's whether or not, first of all, the federal government says that Hamas and Hezbollah are terrorist organizations. So it's irrelevant of how you feel about it. And this is what I was just talking about. How you feel about something and how objectively realism treats the situation are two different things. This has been the problem with female, not just female, but I'm going to use them as an example, not all but some, or not all but most, is the thing is with intellectualism, it has nothing to do with how you feel, it's how you treat the facts objectively. Now, he should have just said he doesn't want to alienate the Muslim community or people within the Muslim community, but it doesn't. If he just said, I agree with the United States government that Hezbollah and Hamas are terrorist organizations, or the federal government lists or sees Hamas as Hezbollah and Hezbollah as terrorist organizations, and I agree with that. He doesn't want to alienate his constituency, which means, are there Americans, Muslim Americans, that believe Hamas and Hezbollah aren't terrorists? You know, one person's terrorist is another person's freedom fighter. I don't agree. I don't agree at all. I don't agree you taking up militancy, right, against a foreign nation, just Israel, is that how somehow that's justifiable. It's different, let's say. Let's take the Houthi rebels in Yemen. Okay, the Houthi rebels in Yemen, I think, if they're Yemeni, they have right to take arms against their government. If they feel they're being, that's not the point. The point is if the Houthi rebels all of a sudden attacked Saudi Arabia, that's not justifiable. That's just where I stand on the issue. All right, post-millennial. Gavin Newsom declares Trump administration cannot drill for oil off California's coast. Over my dead body. Full stop. So Trump had proposed in kind of a troll of Gavin Newsom that he's going to start drilling for oil off the coast of California. It's within the federal government's power to do so. You know, you have to be a certain distance offshore, obviously. But those become United States territorial waters, not California territorial waters. So it's the right for the federal government to issue leases. Now, Perry and I talked about in episode 129 of Tuesdays with Perry last night, we talked about the energy crisis in blue states and how, and I think this is why the troll happened, how blue states like California and Gavin Newsom were blaming President Trump for the energy crisis. It's not, as Perry explained last night, it's not the energy crisis. If you tax gasoline, if you ask the refiners to refine the gasoline more than any other state, that adds an expense. If you shut down the generation of electricity from fossil fuels, that's your fault. That's not Trump's fault. Now, as you know, with the Pacific Northwest and in California and to some degree New York, on the East Coast, they buy most of their power from Canada because they won't allow power generation in their states because of the fossil fuels. That's why you have again, we're addressing the affordability crisis. There's a number of different reasons, including illegal immigration, that increases the demand for housing. So if you let in 10 million people, that's going to, and depending where they go, that's going to increase. And they don't go to rural areas. Most of them go to urban areas to look for work. That's going to increase the pressure on job seekers, of course, and housing second. Now, I want to get into a couple things here regarding race baiting once again, because that's really all the Democrats have is demonization and race baiting. So the Wrap has this article, Podcasting's Diversity Problem. 64% of hosts are male. Thank you. And they're white. Thank you. I am a white male. Why did I get into podcasting? Because I had nothing better to do. I'm semi-retired. And I've been in media all my whole career. And so I wanted to delve into new media because I worked in traditional media, mainstream media, for my whole career. And it's something I could do on my own. So the University of Southern California study finds the podcasting medium significantly trails the diversity of other entertainment avenues. Well, that's not even fair, because other entertainment avenues is that people of color have always been prominent in entertainment. I mean, for over 100 years. It's almost 150 years. And do you consider sports entertainment? If you consider that, I mean, talk about trailing on diversity. It has nothing to do with it. If you're getting into podcasting, it's a technical avenue. And also it's about talking, being able, the reason I really got into podcasting was to work on my public speaking skills, which I had been sorely lacking for most of my life. I grew up, I was kind of shy before I got into journalism, where you're forced to talk to people. So, and not only talk to people, you're forced to get information out of people. But still, my public speaking, especially being able to talk extemporaneously over long periods of time, addressing subject matter in a cogent way, that's what I wanted to do. So let's address what the U.S. study found, USC study found. First of all, there are podcasts all over the fucking place with women. All right, especially, and I wanted to address, if you've ever heard of I've Had It, it is this ridiculous, totally ridiculous podcast with these two suburban bitches, Karens, just annoying as fuck, liberals who are really retarded. I don't think they read enough news to understand much of anything. And I watch some clips from them, but all they do is bash, and we're back to moralizing here. It's immoral, and I find derogatory rhetoric and ad hominem attacks have no place on the airwaves. It's reinforcing, it's the media bubble people put themselves in. Listen to the titles of their episodes. Be mean to fascists. That means conservatives. So already, what happened to mean people suck? That's in the 90s. That's what I was hearing. Mean people suck. Be mean to fascists. And we heard from the Berkeley protest by Antifa, punch a Nazi, punch a fascist. Okay, the next episode is Deliver Us from MAGA. Why? You don't want to make America great? Because you're a commie sympathizer is what it is. Anything but America. America's dumbass dictator, referring to Trump. DL, demon queens of MAGA. And of course, democracy on life support. And keeping up with the cult. Not the blue Kool-Aid drinking cult and their echo chamber, because they are a cult. I don't idealize Donald Trump. To be honest, before he got into politics, I didn't care for Trump much at all. I followed him during the 80s. He was kind of a playboy. And then he got into media and stuff, and I could care less. But I'm not politically, I'm a policy person. What are we going to do politically through policy? So it could have been Trump. It could have been somebody else. So are people cultish around Trump? It's a cult of personality type deal? Maybe. We'll see if, after Trump, whether these constituencies remain. So I want to address the USC avenue again, saying that it's all white males in the podcast sphere, because all they do is refer to Joe Rogan. And I don't know, maybe men like to speak intellectually or to intellectually ask questions about topics. Even Joe Rogan does. LouRockwell.com. Candace Owens has the #1 podcast in the world according to Podscribe. Now, I questioned this when I heard this from my wife. Candace Owens has the #1 podcast. I'm like, according to who? She goes, I don't know. So, according to Podscribe. I don't know why this is or what their metric was to measure this. But Candace Owens has a very popular podcast. She's not white. She's not male. So if you count up all the podcasts, and if you ever try to do this shit, this is, it's like getting into photography right now. The field is completely saturated. Everybody's got a fucking podcast. So I'm competing with billions and billions of people, and I didn't really realize it until I started doing it, whether or not it was going to be something that was worth doing. And then, it became sort of a, I don't want to say a hobby, but it's just something I like to do. Because I always like to talk about news since I was, since I was 8 years old. I mean, when I was 8 years old, I was reading National Geographic. And then almost earlier than that. And then I graduated soon after that to reading Time Magazine, U.S. News and World Report, Newsweek, like voraciously reading. And then by the time I was 12, I started reading the New York Times every day and kept reading the magazines and kept reading National Geographic, but added daily reading the New York Times every day. So I've been interested in current events and news since I was a kid. So that's kind of the way to keep my feet in it, so to speak, to, go ahead and, stay in media in some way, shape, or form after I got booted for refusing the COVID shot. Which I didn't mind because I know people who have gotten the COVID shot and have got sick. All right, let's move on to headlines here. I had to do a little sideshow there. So as long as we're on the topic of Candace Owens, let's address Ben Shapiro, who I never liked. This is from OK Magazine. Lying through his teeth, Candace Owens lashes out at Ben Shapiro over claims she accused Erica Kirk of killing her husband. Now, I like Candace Owens. She's actually from my state, and my wife knows her family. So I've never met Candace Owens. I actually, when I was still in media, I was excited to go to cover, well, we're going to interview, the paper I was working at was going to interview her when she was started on her rise. And I don't know why. Oh, I think I know why. I got pulled off the assignment. Maybe I was too biased, which was a shame. In any case, I like Candace Owens. I've followed her ever since she appeared on Alex Jones shortly after her YouTube channel started becoming big. And I followed her career ever since. Her partnership with Ye, going anti-Semitic or anti-Israel or whatever, and going down this rabbit hole with Charlie Kirk. I can't follow that. I don't really follow her podcast, but I like her. In any case, what happened was, so Megyn Kelly's on this tour recently, and, she hosted, not far from me, she hosted Tucker Carlson, and recently she hosted Ben Shapiro, who I never liked. Never liked the guy, never liked the way he talked, never liked his demeanor. I don't care if he's Jewish, and I don't care, he's a darling of the conservative movement. Fuck him. Never liked him. Don't care about the Daily Wire. I don't care about him. I never liked him. It has nothing to do because he's Jewish. I'm not anti-Semitic. I have plenty of Jewish friends. I don't care. I don't like him. I don't like his demeanor. I don't like people who talk like that and they say something and they always think they're smarter than you. It's just ridiculous. It's just like fucking grow a pair. Fucking guy annoys the shit out of me. I don't like people like that. And the thing is too, is like, I don't hate people, but I hate behavior. Anyway. So he was on with Megyn Kelly and he literally said, Candace Owens accused Erica Kirk of being involved in the assassination of her husband. She never said that. Now, I don't watch Candace Owens regularly, but I keep abreast of what people say. And she never said that. She's sort of intimated that TPS, people within TPS could have been involved, blah, blah, blah. Maybe. I haven't seen any evidence. Like I said, I'm evidence-based. So the OK Magazine story goes on to say, Ben Shapiro took the stage last night with Megyn Kelly and lied through his teeth, according to Candace Owens. He said that I accuse Erica Kirk of murdering Charlie Kirk. This is quite literally made up out of thin air. Looking forward to responding to him on my show later today. I guess that is today. In a follow-up post, she declared, that is beyond smearing. He tried to pressure Megyn Kelly to make a statement about me lying through his teeth and explicitly stating that I accused Erica Kirk of killing her husband. And then saying it was evil that Megyn had to condemn. It wasn't evil Megyn had to condemn. He's completely deranged. He's completely, they're losing. Establishment is losing. The establishment is losing. I said this back in 2015. You had two anti-establishment candidates, Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump. Two anti-establishment movements. One is based in socialism, obviously. One is based in American restoration, I guess you could say. But really libertarian, Tea Party in its roots, trying to get rid of the old guard, the corrupt way America has been governed for some time. So there's two anti-establishment camps, one socialist, one capitalist, and one obviously immoral, or excusing immorality with a swipe of the hand because, with a dismissal of the hand because if it's anti-Trump, then it's okay. Even if it's murder, punch a fascist, kill a fascist, everything is excused. Deranged. And the weird thing is that the ADL, Ben Shapiro, and other people within the Jewish community politically, anti-Semites on the right, anti-Semites on the left. And there was a position, I think it was Golda Meir. Who was it? Somebody said it, a woman said in an interview, an Israeli official said, that we like to provoke anti-Semitism because then we could use the finger to point at them and that's how we get control of the narrative. So in any case, Mediaite is saying, scary, Joe Rogan warns America is on its way to a bona fide civil war. That might very well be true. I don't know. If the left keeps acting the way they act and they don't have a policy platform that could be successful, they're going to end up becoming violent. They already have. The guy at the TPUSA got his chain snatched, got punched in the face. Charlie Kirk got assassinated. Donald Trump almost got assassinated twice. And if you look in the news, there's more and more incidents all over the place of people, you know, you wear a MAGA hat or even a red hat and you get attacked. All right, we led up to this. We were leading to this today. The Washington Times, what to know about Trump's plan to give Americans $2,000 tariff dividend. He's claiming they can finance a windfall for American families. He's promising a generous tariff dividend. The tariffs are the tariffs are bringing in so much money. The president posted a dividend of at least $2,000 a person, not including high-income people, will be paid to everyone. Outstanding. I think he needs to do this. I think it's a public relations coup. If you give money, you're going to win over people, especially people on the left. And you need to do that moving forward, especially before the midterm. Maybe he's going to wait till right before the midterm. I think he should do it now, but whatever. Then they can take that $2,000 and buy health insurance or whatever they need to buy. They buy their own food instead of relying on SNAP. I don't know. I think it's worth it. He's bringing in so much money that it's worth doing. Certainly. Personally, I don't need the $2,000. Actually, I do need $2,000 right now. But if I were to vote on it, I would vote keep the money, pay down the debt. But let's not just go there just yet. I think you should do it. I mean, it's going to win people over, certainly. When the government gives away money, everybody's super happy. Even when under Biden, it was like $500 in the middle of COVID. Well, like how far does $500 go? But it really, and a lot of the money they borrowed, they didn't even spend. Didn't go to Americans. If all that $6 trillion went to Americans, that might have been great, but it didn't. Most of it ended up getting clawed back because they borrowed money they didn't need. Post-millennial, Trump announces massive drop in shootings, theft, crime in Chicago since Operation Midway Blitz was launched. Shootings are down 35%, robberies are down 41%, and carjackings are down almost 50%. Of course. You put more law enforcement on the streets, it's going to deter crime. And also the fact that illegal aliens are involved in crime. That's one of the reasons that they're putting these operations forth. We've got about 7 minutes left to try to get this under an hour because it was a slow news day. I'm going to speed through it. The Federalist, the American dream is harder to reach for millennials and Gen Z. Here's the math. 50-year mortgage, an 8-year car loan, and a forever college payment. Is that the best we can do for our young people? Unfortunately, no, it's not the best. But the problem is affordability doesn't have to do with prices. It has to do with income. And income is being undermined for a variety of different reasons. I already went into it. It's just illegal aliens take jobs, and they take up housing. That's part of it. The predatory housing loan, fucked up housing for quite some time and will continue to do so. The problem is people aren't getting paid enough. And that's one of the reasons you have to get foreigners out of the country so there's more work for people. And plus, people don't really want to work and they don't want to work hard. You have to figure out what you can afford. Because all over media, it's like living this great life, this upper middle class, rich lifestyle. You have people that are on the dole that are driving Escalades around. I mean, it's live within your means. And that includes, that advice is also for the federal government. When American News, Scott Bessett, we inherited an affordability crisis. That's what I've been talking about. We inherited an affordability crisis. We have slowed the price increases down, and they're going to continue to go down. And that's price increases. We're slowing inflation. Inflation at 2.5% or 3% isn't 6%. It isn't 9%, and that's all compounded. But once prices are inflated, they never go down. It's people don't know economics. Real work class wages will go up, and that will address the affordability issue. That's what I'm talking about. And he said this in an X post. Let's keep the economy open. Democrats have tried to block President Trump's policies in court, in the media, and even shutting down the government. And that slows down the economic progress that would be Trump. And that's why they've been doing it, because they knew Trump during his first term turned around the economy quickly. But now they even have the Federal Reserve Board chairman, Jerome Powell, in on it. He lowered the interest rate 0.25 point and then didn't guarantee another one was coming. More immorality. Stars of Wicked for Good hail film as LGBTQ story. The gayer, the better. And this doesn't become clear to the end of this article. When the plot exists only to preach about sexuality instead of moving the audience, the so-called art usually ends up as nothing more than polished garbage. Sadly, there are plenty of folks out there who will eat up a subpar entertainment just because it spits out their own worldview back at them, an echo chamber in movie form. Just like the podcast I was talking about. It's, hey, and if you're gay, great. Or trans, or if you're an adult, you can do whatever the hell you want to do. I don't have a problem with that. But if you're, to me, if you're normalizing perversion, sexual perversion, in media that is going to be digested by children, I don't necessarily believe in that. I'm sorry. Love is love. Great. You want to love a man or someone of the same sex or whatever, or furry. As an adult, you could do whatever you want. But there was an understood, and it's still understood as some people in the gay community, is that sexualizing children, heterosexual or otherwise, or homosexual or otherwise, shouldn't be allowed. You have gay couples adopting children and then exploiting them sexually. Crazy. Going back to immorality here, One American News, DOJ sending Senate panel Clinton corruption files. If you didn't know what happened here, the Clinton Foundation was used by foreign and domestic actors to influence the policy decisions of Bill and Hillary Clinton. According to Just the News report on Tuesday, Attorney General Pam Bondi and FBI Director Kash Patel are sending evidence of influence peddling to the Senate Judiciary Committee. Like we didn't know this was happening. I knew it was happening. It was evident. It was not a drop box. It was a dead drop. It's an electronic dead drop. People would pay the Clinton Foundation millions of dollars, and then Hillary Clinton, as she was Secretary of State, had a secret server in her bathroom at home. She would put classified files in this secret server, and then the hackers could go in and get it. Department of Justice, DOJ officials reportedly have evidence pointing to a defense contractor and foreigners donating money to the foundation while Hillary was Secretary of State. Of course. And then when she left office and Bill was not in office and she wasn't in office, all those donations to the Clinton Foundation, the global initiative, dried up. Investigations into the dubious donations were squashed by the Obama DOJ. Of course they were. That's what I'm talking about. The corruption was so blatant. Sean Duffy accuses no-show Pete Buttigieg of trying to rewrite his record after Trump criticism. This is from Fox News. Transportation Secretary accuses his predecessor of focusing on DEI and climate change over FAA policy. There were 85 near misses in the Potomac before the DCA air crash. Pete did nothing. He spent $80 billion on DEI. It's more grift. And on climate change, he lowered the standards for training for FAA. He focused on pronouns at the FAA. He never worked to fix the air traffic control system. Didn't work on bringing more air traffic controllers into the system. So what he's trying to do is rewrite his record because he wants to run for president. But the truth is he barely showed up at the DOT. Absolutely right. His first 3 to 6 weeks, he was out on paternity leave. Because him and his gay husband adopted a child. There were a lot of people in the Biden administration that were just put there for DEI purposes, and they were no-show. They didn't do anything, including Kamala Harris. She was supposed to be the border czar. I mean, come on. We talked about this last night on Tuesday with Perry. Wall Street Journal. Arrival of U.S. largest warship ratchets up pressure on Venezuela. USS Gerald R. Ford carrier strike group is in the waters off Latin America as buildup of forces continue. Reuters, Venezuelan military preparing guerrilla response in case of U.S. attack. We're not going in there with troops. You know, guerrilla forces aren't going to do anything against B-52 bombings or fighter jets or whatever. Cobra helicopters, whatever. I think the military plan would be to try to snatch Maduro, but I don't know. Zero Hedge, 100 million corruption scandal rocks Ukraine. Zelensky associate flees the country before police raids. So Timur Midik, a business associate of Volodymyr Zelensky, his house was raided, but he fled the country. $100 million in money laundering. See, because the West is still pressing the anti-corruption there. Also, what you have from Zero Hedge, China's purchases of U.S. soybeans abruptly stops. I told you that it was great that they signed off on it, but the Chinese communists always renege on every deal they've ever struck. Because they want to send fentanyl into this country. And Beijing also launched a flurry of goodwill soybean purchases following the summit. Those purchases have stalled, of course. PJ Media also has the headline tracking China and the Americas. Hungi Bridge is falling down and everything else is too. If you didn't see, one of these major bridges going over a gorge in Sichuan province in China collapsed 4 days after it opened. It just goes to show that Chinese engineering and building is a sham for the most part. The Three Gorges Dam went way over budget, went way over completion times, and there are structural problems with it also. So Costa Rica, Public Works, it was a very expensive loan for the country, a series of problems. So PJ Media is talking about Central and South America in the Western Hemisphere. The Belt and Road Initiative put on by China was supposed to help Latin America countries. But as they did in this expensive loan for this construction, for this highway, it was very expensive loan for the country. A series of problems began from the start, etc., and they never finished the highway. In Ecuador, the Chinese Hydro Corporation built a $3.2 billion Coco Sinclair Dam, which opened in 2016. Not only was it poorly built, but it doesn't operate the way it was supposed to, and then it goes into why it's not generating enough power. Venezuela's Anaco high-speed railway, $7.5 billion, which again is a loan that these countries have to pay back. So it's the same type of structural adjustments that American corporations were doing, except here it's the communist state of China. Reality is only about 31% of Anaco line was ever built. More from China. The Telegraph inside China's Area 51. Satellite images shared with the Telegraph reveal sprawling military base and nuclear test facility hidden in plain sight, which they are preparing. They're working on a secret space plane, and they're also working on testing low-yield nuclear explosions, etc. And just like Trump was talking about restarting nuclear testing, but on a limited simulation level. Very low-yield testing at this Lope Nur facility. I think it's near Mongolia. Moving along, Zero Hedge, China's DeepSeek issues rare warning of an incoming AI-fueled job apocalypse, warning that artificial intelligence could wipe out most jobs within the next 10 to 20 years. Not that. It's next 5 years. Not 10 to 20 years. Maybe in China, maybe they're way behind schedule, but I'm telling you, in this country, there aren't going to be any jobs by 2030. Yahoo Finance. UR.AI raises $10.3 million to build the future of individual artificial intelligence. What is this? Seed funding to accelerate the development of individual AIs, digital counterparts that harness a person's memories, stories, expertise, and voice that mirror how you think, speak, and make decisions. An AI avatar, an AI clone of you. That's not creepy. And it's going to replace all humans. The thing is, too, is that they could assassinate someone you know, kill someone you know, put this AI clone in its place, and if you're communicating via electronics, you might never know your actual friend or relative is dead. New York Times, more teens are taking antidepressants that could disrupt their sex lives. Pubescent kids shouldn't be sexually active anyway. That's just another moral issue. Research on adults who take SSRIs show they tamp down sexual desire. So this is a weird New York Times article. I'm not going to get into it so much. The real fact is here that SSRIs make you suicidal. And what they're doing is they're hiding that fact by talking about how it tamps down sexual desires. Antidepressants aren't good for you. They fuck you up. And even if you stop taking them, they fuck up your brain completely. You shouldn't take them. But the most problem with SSRIs is their murder-suicide pills. So here it says psychiatrists and the family doctors told Marie and her parents that she should stay on antidepressants. No, she shouldn't. No, you shouldn't. First of all, it's like I said, they're trying to sexualize young people. And I guess if you're a pubescent teen, 15 or over, and you become sexually active, okay. That's just the way the culture is. I'm not necessarily anything against that, but that's not, SSRIs are the problem is the drugs may avert self-harm or suicide or cause it. Antidepressants are terrible and they drive you to suicide. They make you worse in some cases, they even drive you to become homicidal. Maybe because they tamp it down in your sexual desire, because you know anything about sexual desire, it's an externalization, an outlet for aggressive tendencies, and only because of your primordial bodily function. So that's why it's carnal, is because it was a struggle when man first came on the scene to procreate. And so it has this aggressive tendency. So if you're taking away aggressive tendency, which also leads you to depression, but there are a lot of underlying circumstances for depression. Most is ADHD, which means you can't focus and concentrate on something to make you happy. You feel like you're lost in a deluge of information and emotional feelings, etc. More from the New York Times, what we can learn from brain organoids. So they're growing human brains in a lab. They said it's not, they're not real human brains. They're reductionist replicas of the human brain. And of course, they're studying illnesses. They're not studying anything else but illnesses. It's the same thing with everything else in the progressive science and technological field. No. It's for good things. It's not going to be used for anything crazy or unethical. Talks about raising brains. They found the organoids, in other words, they grew brains from stem cells and they just kept maturing. Freaking crazy, right? Thanks for joining me today. Don't forget to engage the channel. Did we go a little long? I think we did. Let's see, where are you here? Yeah, an hour and 15 minutes. I keep going over. It was a slow news day, and I started late. So you got to forgive me. Just want to remind you to engage the channel, like, subscribe, leave a comment, share the podcast. Remember, you're under attack biologically and psychologically, so stay hip to the trick. I also want to remind you to check out episode 129 of Tuesdays with Perry. Went up last night. We go live on Tuesday night about 9:15. So check that out. Otherwise, I'll see you tomorrow, every day, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. or so, 10:15, on Rumble and other platforms as well. All right, see you tomorrow. Respect.
You're crazy. You're crazy, man. You're crazy. I like you. But you're crazy.
This is a conspiracy. This is a conspiracy. This is it.
The New World Order